The solstice started as every other one has. For the past, we don't even remember how many years it's been since the first, but me and my fire team were just having a bit of fun in the plaza down in the city for once instead of being cooped up in that tower. Children were playing, parents were off drinking and celebrating as fireworks were going off in the background, just leaving little explosions, sometimes scaring older guardians who've seen one too many fallen. But for us, it was just about finally getting some time off from running strikes and getting really sore after the Crucible. Rheign was busy making bets with Incredicus as per usual. Titans never understand what warlocks are like when it comes to their probabilities. He just kept saying over and over, "Come on, man, you can't shoot a solar grenade out of the sky. It doesn't work like that. Especially not with a hand cannon." But Incredicus always would rebuttal with some weird science crud and spit out some random facts, saying how it was a probability of less than 1% and leaving about 20 million numbers behind it. But it was entirely possible. So I had to butt in because they were giving me a headache. And I immediately said, "Okay, if you want to find out if it's possible or not, let me give it a shot. I'm a Deadeye." So, first thing we did was I pulled out my last word and spun it a couple times as he prepared his solar grenade. He looked at me and saw Rheign scoff behind me and shook his head to the side and said, "Oh, it's never going to work. It's impossible." But as Incredicus threw it, I narrowed in my sights and I pulled the trigger once as a bang ripped out of the hand cannon in my hand. It lit the grenade up into a small little solar flare, giving us a feeling like we have a sun right here below the Traveler. The kids were smiling and laughing and clapping at us, and a few of them just kept saying, "Do it again, do it again, do it again." Because it seemed like magic to them when it's really just a blessing from a higher being for us. So we did it a couple more times. He activated Radiance and just kept throwing grenades in the air faster than you can in Mayhem. And every time, faster reloads than I ever thought I was able to do. I just kept popping the grenades, creating little lights throughout the sky. Making the kids smile was something that Guardians don't always do. Unless if you're the Legend, of course, then you come home a god killer. The night became pretty normal. Storm was starting to roll in, so everyone went home after the solstice. The pre-holiday festivities were always nice, because it was mostly just get out of the tower, come back from the Crucible and relax. Hearing Shax tell kids of stories beyond the walls, back in the Six Fronts with the Red Jacks. How Saladin was very unorthodox. I remember those days very well. Rheign looked at us and said, "Hey boss, when's gonna be our next strike?" Incredicus just looked at him and said, "Hey, it's the solstice. Lighten up a little bit. Not everything's just bloodshed." I don't think a Titan would understand that, let alone the meaning of relaxation. They're cousins, but they've always been at each other's throats. Jealous that one of them would always prefer studying and the other would prefer just getting his head knee deep in danger. But as for me, when they found me in the Crucible, I was just a cocky hunter trying to make my way in the world like the Legend. That man was amazing. I ran a couple fire teams with him, and he was something else, ripping through Cabal, cutting down Vex, tearing Fallen and Hive in half like they were butter and bread. He was something else, something I was happy to call a friend, let alone a fire team member. We ran through and killed the Templar together, and he was able to go on and kill Atheon later that month. It was amazing. Seeing him walk home a hero for the first time. To be a god killer. Killed Sepix Prime, Skolos, Atheon, the Templar, Crota. Everyone. Even Oryx and Axis. Siva was something that terrified all of us, but not him. He'd just find a scorch cannon and blow it all to hell. Seems like something he was just good at. Like he was born for it. Or reborn, depending on how you look at it. We all started walking back to the tower. Our ghosts transmitting our weapons back to our bunks as we always had them do. But as the storm was rolling in, we heard something on the comms. Zaval is saying, "Everyone to me," before an explosion. As we looked up, when we heard that, we couldn't believe what we saw. The tower on fire and crumbling down in front of us. Cabal ships everywhere. I had no idea how we didn't know they were coming. We would have prepared orbital defenses with the satellites. As soon as I was able to ask Incredicus what was going on, all we heard him say was, "We got to move now. They knocked out our satellite array, and these are much worse than what we could have ever thought." Our ghost immediately transported us back our weapons. I was running a little unorthodox stuff from the Crucible earlier. Ray's Lighter, Fate Bringer, and the 1,000-Yard Stare. Incredicus had his longbow synthesis with a Suros regime and a good old rocket launcher on his side. Can't remember which one it was to this day. It's something Suros. Rheign had his Suros regime, a LDR, and his Nova Mortis. We were ready for a fight, but we didn't understand what was just about to go down. None of us could have prepared for that. As we fought our way back up to the rooftops, we started picking out the Cabal, wondering why these seem so different, so much stronger. We tried to get onto the comms, but we only heard another group of chatter from the Vanguard, hearing that these guys were Red Legion. Rheign had no idea what was going on. He just kept shooting, not even paying attention, just focusing on just clearing out the Cabal, trying to make sure that everyone was able to get out of there safe. Going in, sweeping buildings, making sure that the families would be able to make it out alive. Getting prepared for when the tanks would start rolling in. But me and Incredicus, we stayed on that rooftop, speechless. We've heard of legions in the Cabal. We cut through the Black Legion when we were going over to Neptune. We took them out a while ago, but we thought they were terrifying to go up against. Towering Cabal in black and red armor, stained with only the blood of fallen and guardians. But the Red Legion was so much worse, brutally efficient, and terrifying to even the best of guardians. when we finally were able to regain our composure and from the initial shock of hearing that it was them, we were starting to wonder, is there a leader here? Every Cabal Legion had a Dominus leader, but we had no idea if he was going to be leading the team on the front lines. That's when we saw him again. We saw the legend jumping from the rooftops, swinging around his golden gun, just piercing through and shooting each phalanx. Just blasting through, cutting through their shields as it overpenetrated and ripped into the next one. More explosions were heard from the tower as he just got picked up by another person who we more or less assumed was Amanda Holiday, later found out it was, as he was carried to what looked like a command ship. Incredicus immediately muttered over to me, "Hey, I hope the legend has a better chance of killing him than Valis Toark." That just made me laugh. We had a giant pain with him back a few years ago. Cabal that wouldn't drop. We started moving back through the town, clearing out any Cabal. Scions were easy. Legionaries a little bit tougher. Phalanxes we were able to work around. Their shields were different, but you still shoot them enough, they'll break. As we regrouped with Rheign about 15 minutes later, something didn't feel right. I wasn't able to pull out my ghost. As we exited the building to get back to the roof, Rheign collapsed. Later me, then Incredicus. We could barely stand. We looked up at the Traveler and saw that there was something around it, like an infection. And an orange glow started to appear as we saw a translucent silhouette of ourselves split and vanish. It didn't feel right. I tried to make a golden gun or throw another grenade, but I couldn't. I made the motion as I normally would to throw the solar grenade, and it fizzled out in my hand. Same for the golden gun. Fatebringer wouldn't ignite, and I couldn't fire a solar blast from it. Rheign said, "Oh, come on. Seriously, Aphottix? You need to get more kills before you can activate a super like that." He immediately tried to rip open a hammer. He pulled it off of his belt, but he couldn't let it ignite. Then he tried to throw a grenade at a Cabal standing below us. Nothing. No incendiary grenade got out of his hand. Before he could even charge off that roof to go slam down onto that legionary below us, Incredicus pulled him back and slapped him right into the helmet. He said, "You idiot. Whatever that was that's on the Traveler took away our light and our abilities. We are no stronger than civilians with auto rifles now. We're back in the Dark Ages. But this time, there's something much worse than warlords." Rheign started just utterly panicking, trying to wonder what is even possible now that we don't have our light. Starting to ask even me what to do. I'm the newest to the fire team, and I did not have any of the communication values that they had. They were cousins, but they were closer to brothers. I looked at Incredicus and said, okay, what's our next move then? I only have a few more shots left in my hand cannon, 2 mags in my sniper, and however long my sword will give me. He looked at me and he said, okay, first we need to get off this roof. We're too exposed. We all looked at him and just nodded. It's probably the best plan we could have right now. Just stay in the corners, stay in shadows. Do what a hunter could do best. Survive. We worked our way down, running through the alleyways, making sure to stay out of sight. That's when the tanks started rolling up. Goliaths just roaming the streets with Colossus behind them. By the looks of their armor, we knew that they were Valis. And that was something that scared us. They were annoying to take down with light. What about without? We couldn't imagine it. We just kept moving. Next thing we know, we saw something completely different. A giant Cabal beast. With 2 giant cleavers just walking around, following what looks like dogs, but covered in scales like they were lizards or dragons. All branded with a logo on it. Incredicus immediately found out that that was Red Legion. He had a thing for ciphers. And sometimes it was more of a curse than a burden for him. But it always seemed to work out for us. We waited for them to pass and wait a minute while we were in all clear. Thankfully, no one started passing again. When we got into another building, we lit up the comms, just asking, is there anyone out there left in the city? We don't have our light and we can't find anyone. We waited for a while. There was nothing. Next thing we know, there was static all over the comms. A couple of guardians were about to say where they were, but then they were hunted down as soon as they opened up their comms. We heard a few gargles and screams before it all went silent, and we heard the roar of a colossus before a giant thud and a crash, assuming that he stepped on a guardian. Or worse. Then we heard something on the long-range comms. We heard a voice that we thought we wouldn't hear again for a long time. It was Saladin. He immediately said, Wolfpack, get over to Vostok Observatory. We'll regroup there and find out our next course of action. We don't have our light here either, but it's better to stay in groups than alone out there. Incredicus immediately said, understood, sir. Be there shortly. We turned off our comms, trying to keep radio silence, and then looked at each other. We're going back to the Iron Temple. We haven't been there since we were promoted to Iron Wolves for helping with the Siva crisis. We continued to sneak our way around, narrowly avoiding everything, praying that the legend would have made it out. As we climbed up to the top of Bannerfall, we saw a few jump ships left. 2 of them were damaged, one was still semi-pristine. Few battle wounds and burn marks and bullet holes, but still flyable, and had a working warp drive at least. We got in it, Rheign flying and me and Incredicus in the cargo hold, and we immediately took off to Vostok. It hit me harder than anyone. They were res together, I was not. They had each other, I had only my ghost, and occasionally Cade, depending on his mood and how much ramen I paid for. But there's one thing I would never truly have. Blood family. But these guys were as close as I could get. As we looked at each other, we couldn't help but smile as we took off our helmets, taking a good breath as we just sighed in relief in unison, and just started laughing, wondering how did we get this far, and just wondering, like, what is the worst that can happen. All we were hoping is that we'd be able to make it to Vostok in time and regroup with the Iron Lords and find out what our next course of action was.